If you have testimony you wish to submit for the record, you may do so via email at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. At any time throughout the hearing, do not approach the dais. We thank you for your kind cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
This meeting is being called to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Councilman Chris Banks, Chair of the Public Committee on Public Housing, and I'm glad to be joined by my colleagues. Councilmember Mealy's on Zoom. As chair of this committee, I know just how important it is for government to make policy that addresses the needs of the citizens. NYCHA is responsible for the needs of hundreds of thousands of tenants, and at today's hearing, we are looking at a policy that directly impacts residents' health, safety, and while also showing how NYCHA can be responsive and listen to tenants when making policy. Today, we're examining NYCHA's rules on the micromobility devices. Everyone in our city has been more of these bikes and e-scooters are on the streets and in our buildings. These devices can be tremendously helpful for New Yorkers as expanding job opportunities or providing an easier and quicker way to commute. Studies have long shown the impact of shorter commutes on upward social mobility and overall well-being. So it is no surprise that e-bikes and e-scooters become so popular so quickly. Unfortunately, we have also consequently witnessed far too many tragedies in fast-moving and dangerous battery fires. The lithium batteries in some of these e-bikes and e-scooters are unsafe, rendered dangerous by factors including improper storage practices, improper manufacturing practices, or both. These batteries can suddenly combust without warning, resulting in especially fast-moving and volatile fires. With such stakes in mind, I am that much more eager to hear about NYCHA's preparations for the newly revised electric mobility policy. I'm aware and glad that this policy was the result of incorporating residents' feedback and concerns over prior vision of the aspects of this policy, its outreach, enforcement, and follow-up through. With my colleagues, I am looking forward to hearing from NYCHA about these crucial details today. I want to know what is being done for outreach around this new micromobility policy. I want to know how NYCHA is taking measures to ensure proper enforcement of this policy, and I want to know who is following through and making sure that the new policy is being comprehended and proactively implemented at the NYCHA buildings. Instead of reacting after another tragedy strikes, as I've mentioned before, I appreciate that this new policy came about as the culmination of public outreach and feedback. But with this, how many e-bikes, e-scooters, and other such devices are out there, including at NYCHA developments, the importance of following through to meet the needs of our residents at that much more pronounced. I would like to thank my staff, Michael Lambert, along with the Public Housing Committee staff, Jose Conde, Connor Mealy, Dan Kropp, Nicholas Montalbano, and Christopher, and Charles Kim, and for all the work that was put into this hearing. Now we will open up and allow the testimony from our NYCHA partners.
So if you could raise your hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions?
Yes.
If you all could just identify yourself and your title as you, for the record, that'd be great.
Brian Honan, Executive Vice President for Intergovernmental Relations.
Eva Trimble, Chief Operating Officer.
Joseph Terranova, Director of Fire Safety.
Siobhan Watson, Senior Director of Sustainability.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris Banks, members of the Committee of Public Housing, NYCHA residents, community advocates, and members of the public. Good afternoon. I am Eva Trimble, NYCHA's Chief Operating Officer. I am pleased to be joined today by Brian Honan, Executive Vice President of Intergovernmental Affairs, Joe Terranova, Director of Fire Safety, and Siobhan Watson, Senior Director of Sustainability. I'd like to note that Mr. Terranova is NYCHA's first ever Director of Fire Safety. He was brought on to oversee our fire safety team, which is part of a recent organizational and operational enhancements, is now a standalone unit dedicated to improving fire safety standards at the authority's developments. NYCHA's transformation is guided by our mandate to strengthen the authority and improve residents' quality of life. At the heart of these efforts are resident engagement and economic opportunities, as well as resident health and safety. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss today an important demonstration of this work in action, NYCHA's implementation of an electric micromobility policy that was shaped extensively by input from our stakeholders, including residents, advocates, other members of the public, and the City Council. Residents' quality of life is central to everything we do. To that end, we endeavored to craft an electric micromobility policy that balances the safety of the NYCHA community with the economic needs of residents who rely on these devices for work and for transportation, especially in the transit deserts around many of our city's public housing developments. NYCHA's mission is to foster opportunity for residents, and we realize that e-micromobility is a vital tool for economic advancement. Due to fire safety concerns, in 2022, NYCHA sought public comment and engagement on a potential ban of e-micromobility devices, including e-bikes, at our developments. We listened closely to the feedback we received, and based on this input, revised the proposed policy, evolving it from a total ban to a restriction. The amended version was presented for public comment in November 2023. In response to the feedback received from our stakeholders during the second comment period, NYCHA adopted guidelines addressing the use of electric micromobility devices in NYCHA buildings and apartments, which are intended to reduce fire risks and better educate the community on good practices, while ensuring that residents can safely store and charge these devices. The policy went into effect March 1st, 2024. It allows residents to keep or charge e-bikes and e-scooters that are legal to operate in New York City bike lanes in their apartments. Those devices that cannot be operated legally in a New York City bike lane or that require DMV registration or a driver's license to operate are prohibited in NYCHA buildings. The policy offers the following safety guidelines. Only one e-bike must be present and awake in the apartment during charging. Extension cords cannot be used for charging, and charging can't take place near radiators or other heat sources or apartment doors or other exits. Lithium-ion batteries that have been banned by New York City law are prohibited, and charging and storage are not allowed in building common areas. In addition to posting this new policy on our website, NYCHA also notified residents through an email blast, development postings, the NYCHA Journal, rent inserts, and among other outreach. Promoting sustainability is also a critical element of NYCHA's transformation, and we recognize that electric micromobility helps advance NYCHA and the city's sustainability agenda. Since 2022, NYCHA has participated in the Adams administration's Interagency Electric Micromobility Task Force, which brings together a variety of city agencies to develop and apply the city's micromobility action plan. The task force promotes safe electric micromobility while addressing the city's fire and street safety priorities by collaboratively developing and deploying a range of comprehensive resources. NYCHA also continues to work closely with partners such as the New York City Fire Department and New York City Department of Transportation on best practices and the best way forward in terms of fire safety and electric micromobility. In March 2023, Mayor Adams announced the Charge Safe, Ride Safe Electric Micromobility Action Plan, which employs a multifaceted approach to reduce fires and promote safe usage of micromobility devices. Included in the plan was a pilot between NYCHA and Con Edison to install outdoor charging and storage areas for micromobility devices at 4 developments, Queensbridge North and Queensbridge South in Queens, De Hostess in Manhattan, and Van Dyke 1 in Brooklyn. We expect the contract will be executed this summer, and installation is anticipated to begin in early 2025. NYCHA was also awarded a $25 million grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to expand micromobility charging and storage facilities to 53 more campuses. We are currently working with our city partners to implement this RAISE grant and look forward to providing an update on this initiative in the coming months. Residents' health, safety, and well-being guide every aspect of our work. We believe we have struck the right balance for promoting safety while fostering economic empowerment, transportation alternatives, and quality of life through our guidelines on the use of e-micromobility devices. We are also creating a safe charging environment for the community by investing in charging stations at our developments. As always, we appreciate your input, and we look forward to our continued collaboration in service to NYCHA residents. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your statement. We will begin by first asking the first question. How would you describe NYCHA's current approach to enforcing the micromobility policy? And is it primary reactive or is it primary proactive in conducting the inspections at the apartments?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. It's definitely a combination of proactive and reactive tactics. It is, at its core, a see something, say something policy. We've instructed all property management staff on the legal devices that are allowed and that they could expect to see in apartments and those that they should not see in apartments.
Okay.
We've instructed particularly maintenance workers who are going into apartments to do work that if they see the device that's not appropriate, or if they see anything that violates the policy, multiple devices charging at once, devices charging near the radiator or by the door on an extension cord, that they need to report that directly to the property manager in order for us to call in the resident for a conference.
And when it comes to training, what training has NYCHA property management staff received about the how to determine if the e-bikes or the e-bike batteries, when it comes to complaints or new rules?
So we've shared pictures of the allowable devices and descriptions of what's permitted in the apartments versus what's not permitted with all property management staff. In addition, I've issued a guidance on the enforcement, and that guidance was reviewed at what we call our muster meetings in the morning, where the staff gather to get their assignments for the day. The assistant super or superintendent have reviewed all of that with the maintenance and other staff.
All right. Has any other staff at NYCHA been trained about the new rule outside of management?
We started with the property management staff since that's the primary staff, caretakers and maintenance workers.
Right.
However, we plan to share the guidance with other skilled trades and other staff that will be entering apartments.
Okay, excellent. What unit in NYCHA has a responsibility for enforcing this new rule?
Our property management department is charged with enforcing this rule through the property management offices.
Okay.
So if a device or an infraction is seen, the worker will report it to the property management, and property management will send a letter to the resident asking for a conference, calling them down to the management office to discuss the infraction, and the manager will work with the resident to, cure the issue. We, of course, want to maintain everybody in a safe and healthy standard, so we want to explain what we saw and ask them to correct the condition.
Thank you. Before I proceed to my next question, we've been joined by Councilmember Salamanca. What public education campaign or outreach has been done by NYCHA tenants, to NYCHA tenants about the new policy and about the e-bike and e-bike battery safety and in general?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember. I'll start and then I'll hand it off to my colleague Joe. So we have briefed the CCOB. We've been to many tenant association meetings where invited. There has been articles in the NYCHA Journal. There were notices in rent inserts, and also as part of the work that fire safety does, they've also done a lot of outreach as well. So, Joe, maybe I could pass that over to you as well.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you for that question, Councilmember. Last October, Fire Safety held the first ever annual Fire Safety Symposium down at the New York City Fire Museum. This was an education program for the resident association leadership. It was in partnership not only with NYCHA Fire Safety, but with the FDNY, multiple divisions of that, New York City Fire Museum, and a few private partners. We had a 2.5-hour lesson on fire safety, and we included a very long section in regards to lithium-ion battery safety that was headed up by Chief Dan Flynn and Supervising Fire Marshal John Orlando. Now, moving forward, we have 6 of these fire safety symposiums planned this year. First one is in the Bronx on July 15th. Similar events, we're trying to bring it more to local level. We are stressing fire safety, and of course there's a module including lithium-ion battery safety and basically all of the knowledge that we've gained over the past year. We'll be introducing the policy, or I should say reinforcing the policy at that point. We'll be discussing some of the previous events citywide to include some of the events that happened at NYCHA. Obviously, there's some expert level folks from the Fire Department, Bureau of Fire Investigation, and from the FDNY Education Unit, and they're going to be transmitting the same message. We're trying to have a unified message citywide to all of our resident association leaders.
I know particularly I had a conversation with a TA president from Pink Houses, and they were quite dismayed at the fact that they didn't get any information. They weren't included earlier on in the development of this policy. And that was something that they had stressed to me, that they want involvement when these policies are being created. So hopefully you can have that conversation again, and hopefully can get to the TA at the Pink Houses so they can know what's going on. And I mean, it's kind of after the fact because the policy's already been released. And I think it's important that we constantly grapple with this, with NYCHA, with making sure that there's resident engagement on policies that's going to affect their lives. You know, these folks live there, you don't. So we want to make sure, again, and I want to reiterate that you know, going forth, that we're constantly engaging the TAs on this, so that they can be engaged in this process. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Councilman Salamanca, who has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I am actually happy that we're having this hearing on micromobility. It's a concern that I have when I speak to my tenants, my constituents. I have the 3rd largest NYCHA portfolio in the city of New York, and they fear, there are many concerns: safety, their intercom's not working, right, leaky roofs, and hey, does my neighbor have a e-bike which he may be charging, which I'm scared that will create a fire in my on my floor. I see here that NYCHA put out a policy in which they must conform to. Now, what enforcement mechanism is there to ensure that tenants are actually complying with your policy?
Thank you, Council Member. So all of our main primary property management staff, maintenance workers, and caretakers have been trained on the policy, so they're on the lookout for devices that are not allowable in apartments, particularly for maintenance workers who are going into apartments to make repairs. If they see a device that's not allowable, or again, if they see multiple batteries charging at once, not in the right location, attached to an extension cord, any of those factors, they report it directly to the property manager, who will then call the resident in for a conference in order to discuss the situation.
What if there's no compliance from the tenant? How far is NYCHA going to go to ensure compliance?
This is in our house rules now, and will also be a violation of the lease if they fail to comply. So worst case scenario, NYCHA will proceed with an administrative termination. However, you know, our goal is to keep people housed and to keep our residents safe in the process. So, you know, we hope it would never come to that we could bring about compliance with the resident through education. However, we would go to administrative termination. We have the ability to do that because it is a violation of our lease. And then if we do find for administrative termination, we could also proceed with a legal eviction case.
Are you posting these policies visible in the hallways and in the elevators? But, you know, not too wordy, something that can catch their attention.
Yes, the policy when it was released was posted. It was also shared in rent inserts. In addition, as part of the house rules, all residents have to affirm that they've read the house rules as part of their annual recertification. So every year when they go back to renew and recertify, they have to review the house rules and certify that they've read it. And so it's all part of the house rules now as well.
And this is bilingual, correct? You
Yeah.
have this available in different languages. Mr. Chair, if I have two more questions, if I may?
No, you may. Do you have any
Thank
more?
you.
Yeah.
Now, does NYCHA require their tenants to register their e-bikes with NYCHA?
No, we do not require registration of the e-bikes.
Why? I would highly recommend you would require them so you can keep track of who actually has an e-bike or not. It's just a recommendation. And then finally, I see here that you got a grant, $25 million grant from the Department of Transportation to expand your charging stations. Maybe a couple of months ago, there was someone that came that had as a starter business on e-bikes, kind of you could rent them, and in his business, he was very proud of the fact that he can take the batteries and for charging and put them into this container. Where should there were a fire where one of those batteries were to catch fire, they would get extinguished. I see throughout my district that Amazon has these kind of containers where you could pick up your packages in front of the buildings. Would you not consider having something similar to that in front of the NYCHA development so that individuals who have to charge their batteries, they can charge them in a safe space?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember. So NYCHA has been looking at how we can respond to the need for new types of infrastructure now that micromobility devices have become so prevalent. So we've been working to do that in a couple different ways. Number one, we've been working with Con Ed on installing 4 pilot charging and storage stations at 4 developments, Queensbridge North and South, De Hostos, and Van Dyke. Number two, we have secured a $25 million grant from the federal government to expand micromobility charging and storage access to 53 more developments. And we are working to finalize that grant award. In terms of the specific types of infrastructure that we would install, I think, we are open to suggestions of what is the most convenient way to serve residents' need to charge safely. So our Con Ed program actually is within their demonstration program. It's specifically geared to kind of find out as much as we can about how useful the infrastructure is, what are the barriers to use, and how we can best serve residents. In terms of the specific technologies you mentioned, I believe one of them is a battery swapping technology. We'll have to get back to you with more details because this is a DOT program, but there is a battery swapping program that is expanding throughout the city. And then the other one, the Amazon, you said the Amazon locker type system?
Yes.
There are a number of different proposals out there about how we might combine micromobility charging with other necessary infrastructure. So we are keeping a close eye on what the options are and how best to serve residents.
Thank you. I just ask that as you're moving forward and you in terms of locations or NYCHA developments, please don't forget the South Bronx, please. And I highly recommend that you look into ensuring that that these e-bikes are registered through NYCHA. Look, I'm a big proponent. This is an industry. This is how they make their living. I want to support it, but I want to ensure, like we all do, safety for our tenants and our constituents first. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Salamanca. We're going to move on. Does this policy, or how does this policy apply to the RAD packs?
So for the developments moving forward that will be closing, they will be under the policy, the NYCHA policy. For the developments that closed before the policy went into effect, each development does have their own individual policy. However, they've all been informed of our policy and have been encouraged to come up with something similar.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So you're going to give them some leeway, those particular RADs that were converted prior to the policy. And okay.
That's right. But moving forward, all the new ones will be under the NYCHA policy.
How does NYCHA keep track of the micromobility devices in the NYCHA campuses?
Thank you, Councilmember. We're not currently tracking comprehensively the devices that we find. It is something that we record within an individual resident's file, but we don't have the ability right now to track overall how many e-bikes or other micromobility devices we're seeing across the campus.
So the residents are not required to notify NYCHA?
No, as we explained to Councilmember Salamanca, we're not requiring registration at this time, so we have no single source for how many may exist.
Well, then I'm trying to understand the enforcement response. How does that work? Can you?
Again, it's if we see something, we follow up on it. So if a maintenance worker is in an apartment and sees a device that's not permitted,
Right.
or again, a charging infraction, then
So-
we're able to follow up with the resident.
So how does, well, I guess maybe you can create a scenario for me where a complaint comes in, whether it's from management or if it comes from the tenant. I mean, how's that complaint received? Is there an investigation done? I mean, these are kind of uncharted. And also, too, if it's an immediate situation with immediate danger, is law enforcement called? Fire department called? I mean, who? So I'm trying to understand if you can expound a little more on how the enforcement will look.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. Of course, I want to be clear for any residents that are listening right now that if they ever feel unsafe or if they feel like they're witnessing an unsafe situation, to absolutely call the appropriate authorities, call 911, call the fire department if they think they are in a dangerous situation or seeing a dangerous situation. That should absolutely be their first stop. Complaints can come in various ways to us. They can come in from neighbors through the property management office. We have an anonymous tip line that residents could call. It can be from our own staff witnessing, maybe someone taking a device in and out of the building. So there's many ways that we can get the information. What happens next is, again, that the property manager will call the resident in for a conference to discuss the situation with them and hopefully explain the safety hazards, make sure they understand the violations of the lease that could exist, and bring about compliance. Our goal is to, through education, to bring about compliance with the policy.
Are the property managers empowered to seize a bike or a battery? I mean,
No, we cannot, touch private property in that way. If our property manager sees something that they feel is severely unsafe, we could also call the fire department, but our goal is to work with the resident to bring about compliance.
and is there like a three strikes and you're out approach to this, or basically on a first violation, a tenant can be dragged into court for termination?
So yes, if we have about 3 conferences before we proceed with administrative termination, and then if we are successful with the administrative termination process, then we can further proceed to through a legal action through housing court.
Does NYCHA know or have any estimation of how many NYCHA residents have micromobility devices?
We do not.
Okay. Before I move on to the next question, I just want to recognize Councilmember Batra. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Batra has joined us. Do apologize. Do you have any questions, Councilmember Batra? Okay. How quickly does NYCHA respond to a complaint in regards to a tenant or a tenant who may be violating this particular policy?
I don't have an exact time frame for this just yet, but if upon receiving the information, the property manager will call the resident down for a conference. So it works, as far as their convenience of meeting together with the property manager. We try to meet with the resident in person to explain the situation.
How is this complaint registered with NYCHA?
It depends on the way the complaint comes in. Again, the residents can call the CCC and put in a complaint through the CCC, and then it would be tracked there. We do have an anonymous tip line that residents can call and place and submit information on their neighbors or something they're seeing in a development, or a resident can just call the property management office and speak to a housing assistant or the property manager themselves and issue the complaint.
Do we have any active complaints that have been registered by tenants or management currently? Because the policy has been out since March.
I'd have to check. I don't have that data with us today.
Okay. And we've established that PD or the fire department can be called by management?
If they see something that they think is a severe situation, a severe hazard, yes, of course, we would call the fire department or the NYPD.
And we're empowering tenants also to call to reach out to management or to reach out to law enforcement?
Whichever they feel is appropriate based on what they're seeing. If I would say an extreme situation that would trigger a 911 call is if we do see a resident who's maybe operating, a bike or battery shop out of their apartment.
Right.
That is we ban businesses like that in our apartments, so that would not be a allowable use. And so if they see someone that has an extreme number in their apartment that they know that activity is going on, they should feel free to call the police department.
Is the property manager or staff, are they allowed to do inspections?
We do our required annual inspections of our apartments. In 2024, we're required by HUD to inspect every single apartment. So again, as part of the inspections, staff are trained to look for these situations as well.
So since the policy has been initiated since March, has there been any inspections authorized by NYCHA?
Yes, we've been doing inspections as part of our regular everyday
I'm
business.
particularly for this particular.
We have not issued any specific micromobility device inspections, and I don't have the data right now, I'm sorry, of any devices that were found during an inspection.
Has there been any emergency inspections undertaken since the new policy was put in place?
No, not yet.
Okay. Has NYCHA tracked the number of residents who have violated the micro policy since the implementation? Has there been any violations?
Not that I'm aware of, but we can double check the data and get back to you.
Okay. How closely are you monitoring this? The violations that are coming in, because obviously this is new territory, or uncharted waters in a sense. When you have, with this particular policy, how closely are you monitoring this?
Right now, property managers, again, there's multiple steps in the process. It's a progressive tenancy process. So, property managers may be calling in a resident for that first conference and it may get resolved. They may have to call back for a second. So I don't have the data on how many conferences are happening specific to micromobility. We're not tracking it at that level, and we have not had to bring a termination case yet for micromobility.
Okay. Can you walk us through the steps of what would happen to a tenant if they're in violation of the micromobility policy?
Sure. We would, again, proceed with the initial conference, and if the condition is not cured, we would have a second conference, and then a third, and then we would proceed to administrative termination. If we're successful in administrative termination, then we would proceed to housing court and seek an eviction of the resident for failure to comply with their lease.
Okay. So I guess would NYCHA consider giving a tenant probation? I guess the second and the third would be considered a probation, and then, or would that just be?
It's just a progressive process
okay.
of tenancy. I think it's also important to remember that even if we go back to the apartment and look, these devices are mobile, so there may be an infraction when you're there one time and not there another time.
Right.
It is an enforcement challenge for us that the policy is still new. We're looking to find the right balance between residents' ability to have these devices and the enforcement of them.
Does NYCHA offer any resources to educate the residents about safe charging practices for the micromobility devices? And how is this information distributed?
I will hand it over to Mr. Terranova to talk more about the fire safety education we've been doing in general.
Thank you, Councilmember. I apologize. Could you repeat the question?
Does NYCHA offer any resources to educate residents about the safe charging practices for the micromobility devices? And how is this information distributed?
Oh, that's a very good question. Thank you. So first off, I want to say a couple of things. The best fire to have is the one that doesn't get started in the first place. So fire prevention, especially with lithium-ion battery-powered devices, is the key to our success in this program. I would also like to commend City Council for passing the first-in-the-nation law in regards to the sale of only third-party certified devices. It's nice to be part of that program with that. Now, having said that, there is a fairly extensive internal and external public education program that we have there. Starting with a number of fire safety symposiums that we're holding for our resident association leaders, one per borough, and then we're going to have a final one in October to wrap up the rest of the city that we missed down at the Fire Museum for City of New York. We have family day coordination with the FDNY Education Unit. They come out, they help provide that public education part, and they have direct interaction with the residents during the family day events. We have Fire Safety Week. Actually, we're now making it Fire Safety Month, the month of October, with the anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. There's Fire Safety Week. We promote that for an entire month. Each week we have a different topic that we stress, both in mailings, emails, on our website, and that message that goes out to all the residents and staff. We have some internal staff training and credentialing that goes along with this. This way they can repeat the message, and we're trying to have a uniform message along with our partners. We do partner and collaborate and coordinate with the FDNY, Bureau of Fire Investigators, who are taking the lead on the lithium-ion battery safety issue citywide. We obviously have the Bureau of Fire Prevention involved in this. We have a fairly strong partnership with the FDNY Education Bureau under their FDNY SMART program. We direct all of our residents to their web page, and we try to have a common safety message associated with that, and those messages are available in multiple languages from that. We also have partnership with the Fire Museum of the City of New York, all right, and we have entry into the Fire Museum. We do for NYCHA residents. We have our symposiums there, and we try to promote the same message. So yes, we have a fairly extensive messaging program, both online and in person, for fire safety.
All right, thank you. We're going to now, before I proceed, I'm going to allow Councilmember Boccia to move forward with his questions.
Thank you, Chair. This policy went into effect on March 1st across the NYCHA portfolio. The policy that only one e-mobility battery may be charged at a time, the adult must be present and awake, extension cords can't be used, they can't charge near radiators, they must be certified batteries that are allowed by law, and the charging can't happen in common areas. I missed your answer before. Have there been any violations of the policy since March 1st in the NYCHA portfolio?
Thank you, Councilmember. So I don't have that exact data with me today, partially because we don't really use the term violation. However, it's possible that a property manager has had that initial conference with a resident, but we're not tracking that specifically just yet. So I can't say for certain whether those conferences have or have not happened.
The reason I ask is that we have quite a few tenants who are really concerned for their safety. And I don't blame them because of the fires and the fatalities that have happened. And we do want to make sure that this policy is enforced. There's no shortage of policies that NYCHA has that aren't very well enforced, and I'm aware of the challenges of that, with the portfolio that you have and the scale of it. But I look forward to working with my colleague, Chair Banks, and all of you to ensure that this policy is enforced and that people are kept safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Councilmember Bottcher. I'll move forward with my questions. How often does NYCHA update residents when it comes to the various housing policies? And I think I asked that question already. What measures are in place to aid with the community when it comes to the continuality in the outreach around the enforcement with this policy to residents, building management, and other points of communication? The outreach, back to the outreach. When there's changes in the policy, if so?
Sure. Thank you, Council Member. I think a lot of the ways that we had mentioned earlier, we promote it on our website, through our journal, through the events that Joe had described before on fire safety. We also put out this policy out for public comment as well. And so we wanted to make sure that NYCHA residents, advocates, and then just members of the public, had the opportunity to comment on the policy before it went out and tell us, if we're heading in the right direction. And so this wasn't something that we just, told folks, and then, it was out for quite some time before, for at least 30 days before we put it into effect.
Okay. What is the current status of the 4 charging stations planned in partnership with Con Edison at Queensbridge North and Queensbridge South? And I think the Hostess and Van Dyke houses.
Sure, thank you for that question. So we have been working with Con Ed to secure a vendor to install and maintain those stations. There was an RFP put out that received a response. We've actually had the TA presidents from those 4 developments were involved in the selection process for the RFP, and we expect that the vendor will be announced later this summer. After that point, Con Ed has to go to the Public Service Commission for approval, since it is a program that requires their approval, and we expect that installation will begin, if that approval is secured, in early 2025.
All right. Will these stations, will they be open to the general public, or is it just strictly for NYCHA residents?
These 4 pilot sites will be for NYCHA residents.
And how much does it cost to create a designated charging station?
So I don't have an exact number for you on the price. Our goal with installing these stations is to serve residents with this newly needed infrastructure without impacting NYCHA's already stretched budget. So we are relying on partnerships and grants for these installations. This one is funded through Con Ed, and I don't have the exact budget number.
Will there be a fee?
Yes, there will be a fee for them. We don't know exactly what the fee will be for usage, but it will be set in a way that is designed to encourage usage and not have it be a barrier.
So there'll be a fee for charging and storage?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. What is the current status of the 53 charging stations funded by the federal DOT grant?
Sure. So that grant was announced in June of 2023. The award of the grant, however, has not yet been finalized. So we are working closely with our fellow city partners on finalizing the grant award and developing plans for the implementation of that.
Is there an environmental review process complete?
Yes.
Has that been completed?
The environmental review is ongoing for them. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what is the bidding or the construction? Has that begun for the stations?
Construction procurement, no, that has not begun yet.
Okay. Has there been any determination about where these charging stations will be built?
About where within the development they will be built?
Yeah, like will they be in the parking lot? Will they be, yeah.
That is part of what we are still determining along with our city partners.
Will the feedback from the residents and the design and the placement, is that also something that will be taken into consideration, or will there be in making these determinations?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we did have resident leader participation in the vendor selection process for the Con Ed pilot. Resident engagement in the process for installing the future stations through the RAISE grant is also very important to us. We did start reaching out to resident leaders at the 53 developments that will be served back in July of 2023 and kind of got an initial read on feelings about the program and the stations, and did some further follow-up with resident leaders that were hesitant or had more questions about the stations, and we'll continue that kind of engagement as we get down to those details of exactly where the stations will be located.
So this level of engagement that's being done with the the pilot, this is the model that's going to be followed by for the other 50 or so sites, or 47 sites.
Yeah, I mean, we are working to standardize resident engagement across all of our capital projects in the Asset and Capital Management Division, and make sure that we have touch points throughout the kind of scoping, design, and construction process for our capital projects, and definitely want to follow that model as we implement the RAISE grant implementation.
Will there be particularly any town hall meetings of some sort when it comes to educating the tenants or the residents on this particular policy?
We have not planned the exact form of engagement as we move forward with the grant implementation, but we certainly want to make sure that people understand what they are, how to use them, and have opportunities to give input through the design process.
Will there be signage placed throughout the developments, and is there signage being placed letting them know that this policy is in place, and is there any direct consultation going on, so residents are aware? Because obviously we know that there's frustration with NYCHA, with a lot of residents saying that they're not getting information, and this not having this information can definitely be definitely harmful to the tenants, especially those who have these particular devices. And as I said, this is part of you have a lot of tenants who are using this to make put food on their table. So is there has NYCHA been aggressive in making sure that the tenants understand the importance of this particular policy and understanding it, so they don't they're not in violation of their lease?
I'll defer the policy question. That's a question about the overall policy, not
Correct.
the stations, right?
Councilmember, yeah, I think, on this, we did spend a lot of time. Number one, it was a concern that we heard from residents about the safety issue. We had an initial proposal that banned, the devices altogether. And we heard not only from this committee, but we heard from residents, and we heard from many advocates too, that was going a step too far. It's something that we heard very loudly, it's something we heard very clearly. We work very closely with this committee in order to shape a policy that we thought that listened to residents' concerns, that was a reasonable compromise, that had safety in mind, but also kept in mind that people want to use these devices for many different reasons. Some of them for economic reasons, some of them, for good transportation, some of them just for fun. They don't have to tell us why they use them, but they want to make sure that they have the ability to do so. So I think this was something where we really did learn a lot. We really did listen to a lot of people, and we certainly heard from a lot of people. It is amazing to me how strong the opinions are of people on this issue, one way or the other. But but this was something that we took a long time, and we did make sure that the word was out there. And we heard it in our last year's annual plan meeting. I'm sure in the annual plan meeting that's coming up in July 30th, excuse me, we'll be hearing, from residents too again, as well about this. So it's as well about this. So it's out there.
Thank you. When it comes to registration again, how's that going to look? Where we at with exploring the possibility? I think it's a good idea, and I'm hoping that we can, get some, clarity as to how that registration is going to look.
Thank you, Councilmember. It's something that we're willing to explore more of. I can't see anything specific on it yet, as we have to look into it some more.
Yeah, but it makes sense, perfect sense in a sense of having a registration, because it allows for tracking for these particular devices. And I know the policy is just put in place as of March, but it would be good if we get some clarity as to, again, determining how many of these devices are on NYCHA developments. And I think it will help with educating the residents as to, doing this in a proper, most safe way, and for the compliance with the policy. We, at this point, I guess we don't have any more questions for you. I appreciate you for coming and your statement and your testimony, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
We're going to move to public testimony now. Thank you. I'm now opening the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a governmental proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from witnesses from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recording as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant of Arms for inclusion into the hearing for record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, if you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out the appearance card with the Sergeant of Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak at today's hearing topic, NYCHA's electronic mobility policy. And if you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov or the other email address within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. I would like to call the first, our only, you can come on up. That would be Alejandro Graves.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the council member Banks, chair of the Committee on Public Housing, and all the members of this committee for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Worker Justice Project and Los Deliveristas Unidos. My name is Alejandro Grajales. I am a member of the Workers Justice Project and leader of Los Deliveristas Unidos to fight for better workplace conditions for app-based delivery workers in the gig economy. We are grateful to testify today to discuss ways delivery workers, the council, and NYCHA and other partners in city government can work together to develop a comprehensive roadmap for micromobility. As deliverista and leader of Los Deliveristas Unidos, I'm deeply concerned about the hazards and fires caused by the lithium batteries. As reported by the city newspaper, the market has not yet adapted to the law requiring stores to sell UL-certified bikes and batteries, resulting in a significant supply gap. That's why we were proud to stand with the council to pass a groundbreaking trade-in program for lithium batteries and e-bikes last year to help low-income delivery workers unable to afford new equipment to effectively transition to the new regulation. We hope to see this program set up immediately. We appreciate NYCHA's partnership and proactive efforts to educate residents about property battery charging, as well as their commitment to build e-bike battery charging stations across multiple NYCHA developments. We hope that NYCHA's charging battery stations will be available for use to deliveristas who are delivering food to NYCHA residents and build an environment that is welcoming to deliveristas. And as Los Deliveristas Unidos, we look forward to working with NYCHA, City Council, and other partners in expanding e-bike battery charging station and deliverista hubs throughout the city. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and we look forward to our continued collaboration.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move to our virtual testimony, and the first person will be Dana Eldon.
You may begin.
Okay, I'm having a hard time with this mic. Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman.
Good afternoon.
And to the rest of those in attendance. My name is Dana Eldon. I'm president of St. Mary's Park Houses Resident Council. I come to the council today not only about the usage of maintenance of lithium-ion battery usage and e-bikes in NYCHA developments, but to also bring notice to the council and to NYCHA that there is a growing population of those like myself who are disabled and use electric wheelchairs that use lithium batteries. My chair uses 2 lithium batteries that must be recharged almost daily in my apartment. Although there is a concentration of charging batteries safely in apartments with the adequate charging policy measures that are in place, there is a concern from the residents regarding the possibility of inadequate electricity needs that are not being met. Electrical boxes in the apartments are also important when charging these devices, as well as mobility devices such as electric wheelchairs and scooters that are needed by residents like myself that depend on these devices to go about our daily needs. In the past, NYCHA would send electricians to the residents' apartments and then charge the resident a $75 fee to insert these boxes. Also, it has come to my attention that in the Inspire Inspection program from HUD, that many apartments with air conditioners and those that use wheelchairs are also entitled to have these boxes in their apartments to appropriate the electrical needs for these devices. I'm sure that this endeavor is colossal to NYCHA and the needs of many that may overwhelm NYCHA, but it is my concern that this population of seniors and disabled residents have been overlooked.
Your time has expired.
Of course,
You can have another minute.
Mobility. Bikes is top priority. There is a population of residents that must be acknowledged, and the usage of electrical infrastructure is paramount as well. thank you for this chance to speak to the council.
Thank you, Ms. Eldon. Before you leave, Ms. Eldon, how do you currently charge your particular battery?
Well, I paid $75 years ago for one of those boxes.
Okay.
But if they put it in my living room for my air conditioner, I need to be able to charge it in my bedroom. It is unbelievable what I have to go through to get to my wheelchair every day and to get out of it to get to my bedroom. I need a box in my bedroom as well. And of course, that is something that's not happening.
Right.
And so I'm not the only person. I'm quite sure I'm one of the few with a box, but there are others that are in wheelchairs as well who are plugging their wheelchairs in regular sockets and plugging their air conditioners in regular sockets. And we just had a fire not too long ago from that happening. Someone plugged their air conditioner into a regular bedroom socket, at which it sparked, fought onto the curtains. She was burnt out of her apartment and was just recently, last week, able to return after 6 months of being in a courtesy apartment.
Yeah. Thank you for enlightening us on this and really opening our eyes to this, because there's just been a heavy focus on just the e-bikes. And I think definitely now will give us some food for thought, in our conversation with NYCHA. So I thank you so much for this, for your testimony.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And please note that this population is growing.
Yes,
Seniors
so true.
in NYCHA are a large percentage now. So many of us that are disabled are in wheelchairs or need electrical devices to assist us, like hospital beds. So NYCHA must pay attention to this population. They have us list all of our devices on our leases. When we do our recertification, we must list all our devices. If that is the case, I have air pumps and other things that must be used on my body. And those things are registered on my lease. However, NYCHA has not addressed the electrical needs that I need in my apartment, and I'm not alone. So thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Yes, now we will move forward with testimony from Christopher Leon Johnson.
Hey, hello, Chair Banks. It's Christopher Leon Johnson here. What's up, bro? Thank you for having me on. So I want to make this clear, right? We just saw Alejandro from Austin Ernesto's Work Justice Project speak about his for his organization. Let me make this clear. Alejandro is not a deliverista. He's a construction worker that's acting like a deliverista. He's a fake deliverista, and he's a lobbyist that is working for Transall and Open Plans and all these organizations that's against the safety for the NYCHA residents when it comes to e-bike safety and electric micromobility. Now, if Alejandro and everybody know Ligia Galapia wrote that speech for him because Alejandro don't know English. Ligia Galapia wrote that speech for him, just like she runs his social media accounts and all the accounts. If he really cared about the safety of the NYCHA residents when it comes to micromobility, he should be advocating for Intro 606 that is introduced by Council Member Bob Holden. But the problem is him and his people like Ligia and Gustavo and Antonio, they are against the bill. Now, these guys, they came here today. The reason they was out, they don't care about the NYCHA, they don't care about the NYCHA residents, guys. They don't care. All they care about is they deliveristas. And what needs to start happening with NYCHA, they need to start making sure that if this happens with Schumer putting all his money to NYCHA for the e-micromobility, what needs to start happening, make sure that only NYCHA residents are able to use those charging devices. Only NYCHA residents, not the deliveristas. That's the only reason why they came out here today, because all they're trying to make sure that they are able to use those NYCHA those charging stations. They're able to drive all over the city, breaking every law with the e-bikes and mopeds, and making sure they can go there and charge all the stuff. Everybody know what's going to happen is the deliveristas are going to hog those stations. The NYCHA residents will not be able to hog those stations. Now, this is a crisis in New York City. These people like Ligia and Transall and Gustavo, they are totally against real
Time has
safety
expired.
measures. Safety measures
Thank you
city.
for your testimony, Mr. Johnson. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
All right. Well, guys, that concludes today's testimony. We will now adjourn today's